Welcome along, guys. We are back in the Japanese garden for another comparison video. We've got two absolutely beautiful Italian beauties behind me. Oh. Yeah, not you, Greg. We've got the Tuono, the new 2021 Tuono, and the new 2021 Street Fighter in that lovely satin black, matte black. Oh, it's gorgeous. But don't go anywhere because we need to roll the intro. In this video, we're going to be comparing these, we're going to be riding them, we're going to be deciding which one would suit you if you're in the market for an Italian V4 naked. Chop C or Gregory, roll the intro. So welcome back to the Japanese garden. Welcome back, Gregoire, for this comparison. I know you all love Gregoire. You know, like, oh, what's his channel? Give me some details. He ain't got a channel. He's exclusive to Lamb Chops Rides.
I'm sure they don't say that.
They do.
But it's nice to be back anyway.
No worries. I'll just drop the phone. So today we've got the ultimate test, really. Two premium motorcycles, two premium Italian beauties. And these bikes are. They're up there, aren't they? Are these the only V4 naked you can buy? I think there's no other V4 nakeds. These, if you want a V4 and you want a naked, it's between it. These are it. Yeah, basically. Oh, it's not a bad old day, though, is it? A couple of V4s to mess about with.
Wow, this is like the Italian pinnacle, isn't it?
The pinnacle of Italian nakeds.
Yeah, it's incredible to get a chance to do this. I feel quite honoured.
This is the ultimate test ride, isn't it? If you want to buy one, back to back. If you're not sure which one you want to buy, a Street Fighter or Tuono, this is the way to test them. So the big one, performance. Yeah. Performance of the bikes, everything, handling, speed, the whole package. You can start on this one if you want.
Well, they're obviously both extremely good. Extremely.
They're mental, aren't they?
They're mental fast. They're so fast. And I think my observation on the Aprilia to start with is, a lot of the reviews that I've read talk about the fact that it's only 177 horsepower now. Forget that. In the real world, it's so fast, you can't really rev it out very easily.
It feels no slower than that, does it, to ride? No, we've done a drag race as part of this, and it is fractionally slower, but it's no real world.
Real world, it's marginal, and I think real world mid-range is stronger, quite a bit stronger, I'd say. Certainly the bottom and the lower echelons of the revs. It's a missile. They're both missiles. The Ducati, by contrast, the throttle feels quite lazy, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And again, in relative terms, because they're obviously fast bikes, but when you ride them back to back, and when we're together riding, that's sort of gone by the time that builds a little bit, and you need to give that loads of throttle movement, don't you? Whereas on the Aprilia, it's much more subtle, isn't it?
It is, and we've sort of said you need to finesse that in the past, haven't we, to get the best out of it, especially a bit like the RSV4 as well, but it's almost like the opposite of the Ducati. The first half turn does nothing, and then it's from the half turn onwards.
Exactly.
It's a mapping thing. It's how they've set it. It's how they've sort of made it more safe, I suppose. I know the Panigale used to be the same.
Yeah.
Last year's Panigale had in the race mode. Now it's got a race 2 mode, which has brought in some aggression to the throttle response.
As you say, they've done it just so that people can ride it. But I think they've taken it too far. And actually, it's either a little bit placid, and then it turns into like a ballistic missile. I'd prefer it was a little bit more ballistic, just in that mid-range. More initial bite. And it actually doesn't, it sounds a bit odd, but I don't think it feels that fast in the lower rev range. Certainly by comparison it doesn't. And I think, forget these two, I think compared to other super nakeds, it doesn't feel that fast. And I would expect a 208 horsepower naked to be rampant, and it is, but only at the very top.
You'd be expecting the front wheel to be in the air, you'd be fighting it. It's not like that at all. No. I'm sure they could do an A2 version of this, because it's that stable, it's that planted. Well, that front wheel just doesn't really want to come off the ground. And I've got the wheelie control off, I've got the traction controller. It's still so stable. It's just that flat throttle, and that is, I think maybe if you had a pipe and the Ducati do an up map for it, that may liven up a little bit more, but it's just a little bit flat on the throttle. Bit flat. But that aside, handling, both
perfect.
Incredible.
I mean, the performance category, the Ducati you can ride so quickly, so easily, it's incredible, isn't it? And
So
it doesn't
stable.
ever get out of shape. It is literally like on rails, and it's so easy, isn't
Yeah.
it? It almost removes the rider from to it's that easy.
It is,
And you know, it's probably a good thing for most riders. For me, it's a little bit unengaging because of it, because it's a little bit easy, isn't it? But the performance of both is amazing. The Aprilia, in my mind, is more involving.
Yeah.
So that's a little bit more exciting, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree.
But
with
if
you
you want to go quickly, either of these clearly are definitely good choice.
There's nothing in it in the performance stakes, really, is it?
No, they're fast.
Both.
Really fast.
Very, very fast. I think it's time for the drag race.
Do it.
Bring it on. Right, little drag race on the private road. 3, 2, 1, go. Little drag race to 60. No, 60, not 160. Let's do a swap on the other bikes. So it's fair, because I'm a big fatty, so it's got more weight to carry. First gear. Let me come alongside. To 60-ish. Ready? 3, 2, 1, go!
There's not much in it.
There's not much in it, but I think this just has a bit more at the top, doesn't it? But, which is right. I mean, this is 200 horsepower. That's 180 in it, so I guess that's that, isn't it? But the electronics are amazing.
Yeah.
200 horsepower bikes. You've got the throttle pinned in first gear, and it just puts it all down. That's incredible, isn't it? Next point: quality of the bikes. So the Ducati is incredible quality, and I think it does stand head and shoulders above any of the other nakeds, you know, Super Duke, all of them, including the Tuono.
Yeah.
It's just got the finish on everything. You can just zoom in on any little part of detail on the bike, and it's just, you can't fault it.
You can really
it's a beautiful
see
thing, isn't it?
where your money's gone. It's premium. Everything is premium about it. I mean, I've parked it up, and people that are non-bikers talk to me about it. They sort of like look over it. I keep looking over it. It's beautiful.
Yeah.
In terms of engineering, everything just looks top drawer, doesn't it?
It does.
Really, really good. And I mean, it should be, because it's expensive.
It's over 20
But they're
grand.
both expensive.
Yeah.
And I think by comparison, the Aprilia mechanically, I think, is very, very good, very nice. And it all feels nicely made. But I do have a little bit of a disappointment with the plastics. They feel a little bit cheap. And certainly by the side of the Ducati, it doesn't feel as premium.
It does. Parts side by side, you can sort of notice it. The plastics on that are, I mean, the Tuono the factory version used to have a bit of carbon on it. You know, certainly the end of the last gen. Well, obviously they were trying to clear a lot of stock because it needed a bit of a facelift, let's be honest. So they were chucking on carbon bits and bobs, and that gave the bike a whole overall much higher quality feel than what it is this year.
I prefer the sort of new look and the fact that it's a bit bigger. But I think that it looks like it's taken a little bit of a step backwards in terms of the plastic quality versus the previous one. And not just the carbon. I just think the whole thing just looks a little bit cheaper. Which is a bit of a shame, really.
Yeah, it is.
And the way round it for us would be, we'd probably mod it a little bit of carbon we'd add ourselves, but when you're at this price point, it's a bit depressing that you might have to do that straight out of the gate. Really.
And it's things like the seat looks, it's the red seat, which you mentioned before, but it looks a little bit plasticky, certainly in the red as well.
It does,
Whereas you've got like the Alcantara seat on the Ducati. It needs nothing, does it? It really, I mean, it has still got plastic mudguards and stuff, but they just look a higher quality plastic than the ones on the Aprilia.
This is glorious.
You're loving it, are you?
Oh, it's amazing.
Let's push them up the hill climb. It does change direction nice, this. So I mean, that slightly flat throttle response does make it easy, whereas I know the Tuono is quite lively on the throttle, isn't it? Whereas this, it's easy peasy in the corners.
Oh my God, this is nice. The noise.
What are you thinking then, Greg? What are you thinking? Because you've been quite excited about trying that, haven't you?
Yeah, I have. I've been itching to try it again for weeks and weeks, and I'm loving it. I really like it. Yeah, I'm not even convinced that I'm actually the fastest I am on this compared to other bikes that I've ridden. But I don't know if I care, it's just so nice.
Well, that's it, isn't it? You're not buying these bikes we wouldn't be buying these bikes as track bikes per se, so you know, chasing lap times doesn't matter, does it? It's all about the thrill and the engagement of riding them, isn't it?
Exactly.
The sound of these things. I mean, V4's the ultimate sounding motorcycles in most people's mind. I don't think many people would argue with that.
No.
The Ducati is a very, very strange sounding V4, isn't it? It sounds like a V-twin. It sounds like my old Super Duke when you're going through town on it. It's very twin-like. When you get above sort of 5,000-6,000 revs, it develops a different sort of noise, but doesn't, not a V4, a bit V4-y, but just like a slightly odd-sounding twin.
I wouldn't know it was a V4 if I didn't know it was a V4.
You wouldn't never guess it was a V4, would you?
No, and that's even on the ride bys. It doesn't. It sounds like a twin, but a little bit of a peculiar sounding twin. The Aprilia, by contrast, is so obviously a V4. It's unbeatable on the sound, and I think, the sound on the Aprilia, and even in stock form, it is so unbelievable. It's sort of quiet. Then you get to about 5,000 RPM, and it clearly has a valve that opens in the exhaust, and it's really quite an impressive sound. I don't think you actually need to change the pipe from a sound point of view.
Absolutely
I'd only want to change it because I'm not sure of the look of it.
Listen to this. Let's have a listen. Let's have a listen. Still sounds nice, but it's just different, isn't it? It's just not got that classical V4 sound though. One of the big things with new machines, especially performance machines like this, is electronics. And sometimes the electronics can ruin a bike. And this is a good reason why we've had this for a couple of weeks, because we've gone in, we've learnt about it. When I picked up the Streetfighter, I wasn't sure about that heavy engine braking. It's all to do with the electronics and the suspension on this. Again, there didn't seem to be any difference between the different dynamic modes. So I've gone in and I've configured it, and I've manually configured a softer mode for the street mode and stuff like that. And it really has a massive impact to how the bike rides.
Yeah, totally.
And I mean, on the drag race we did, I mean, it was incredible that the wheels weren't lifting, and you know, modern electronics are just amazing, aren't they?
Literally to the stops in first gear, rolling start, only in first gear because obviously you don't want to speed and break the law. Obviously. And it is afterwards we couldn't believe how you could ride them like that, and they're completely in check, and they really motor, but it doesn't. I mean, years ago you literally would have just looped the bike, wouldn't you? And it's incredible, but it doesn't sort of all start getting tied up in knots with electronics either. It's almost seamless, isn't it? Yeah, really, on both of them.
Absolutely, and they're both really good electronics. I don't think you can pick anything between them. What I like about the Ducati actually is you can fully customise all of the standard rider modes, whereas on the Tuono you can only customise the user mode. You can't touch the other two modes, they're fixed, whereas you can fully customise these.
Can you not change any of the modes?
No, you can only change the user. You can assign different suspension settings to them.
That's all though.
That's all you can do. You can't adjust.
So you can have a soft suspension in sport. Exactly. If you so chose, but that's the only thing you can change.
You can't adjust engine braking in those maps.
But I'm not convinced that's a major problem, because that user mode on here is amazing.
It is.
And so you can just tweak one of the preset modes so that you've got the suspension setting of your choice, and then the user mode, which I've used most of the time, you can have whatever you like on it, and it remembers it all.
The suspension on the Tuono, even though it both got the Öhlins EC2 system, it seems better on the Tuono. It seems to be a wider range of adjustment.
Agreed. It's more noticeable, the differences in the setting. And I don't understand it either. This Aprilia suspension is probably the best I've ever experienced ever in my life.
It's really good.
It's unbelievable. The handling is perfect, but it is comfortable on the road. And it's so refined, it feels plush, it's amazing. I think on the Ducati, it's still, for some reason, even though it's better and we've got it as we like it, it's still a bit too hard for my liking.
It is. I've got it. If you really have it as soft as possible, doesn't seem as soft as you can go on that, and everything just is a little bit tauter on it. I mean, it could be preload, because of course the preload is manual. So maybe the preload set differently. Didn't check that. That's a good point.
Will it have the same springs necessarily?
It could have different springs.
It might have different springs.
It could be.
So then it's not about adjustability anyway.
Yeah, exactly. So, but it's definitely for the road.
It's a bit hard for me, that.
It's a little bit hard. The Tuono seems plusher. It
Perfect.
seems nicer, doesn't it?
Yeah.
And you can what you can do with the Tuono as well, you can go into all of the settings and adjust like extra brake support and really customize it,
squat.
and then you can have that saved as a preset, which you can then assign to any of the maps. Whereas on the Ducati, you can go into a map and adjust it, but you can't then assign that map. Like the suspension doesn't have its own mapping, if you like, which you can then assign to a rider mode.
No.
It's just fixed within the rider mode.
Yeah.
So they're both really good as well, because they remember when you turn them on and off, it remembers. They've both got wheelie control isolated from the traction control, which does work better on the Tuono. So if you want to pop a sneaky, so in the user mode you can turn off the
on a
traction.
runway earlier today, private runway, no planes taking off because of COVID, there's no flights, which was handy.
Heathrow, this was, isn't it?
Yeah, I got air traffic control clearance to pop one, and the traction control was up really high because I've been out in the wet yesterday, and it's still wheelied. It's incredible all day long,
even with the high
traction right up.
Yeah,
and
whereas,
so that's a little bit more sensitive to that.
Yeah, the Ducati, you've got to have traction down to like number 1 for it to allow you to do that.
Which is good because you still have it on.
Well, you can still have it on. Originally we thought you couldn't have it on, but you can have it on, but it's got to be on a low setting. If you're into wheelies, I mean, if you buy these sorts of bikes, you may be into wheelies. The Tuono wheelies better than the Ducati.
Yeah, I think
they're both. You know, it's because of that muted throttle again. You've got to really give it.
But you say, I do agree with you, but don't read into that you can't wheelie the Ducati.
No.
We've mastered it quite well, and it does seem to like it as well.
Well, it's so planted, this bike.
What I don't like about it is it doesn't do it under its own steam over crests, which I personally quite like in a bike where it's just got
engaging,
a
isn't it?
Exactly, it doesn't do that. But if you provoke it to, it will.
It will.
And it doesn't seem to protest.
You've got to want to provoke it, whereas that will do it anyway.
Exactly. And if you don't like that, obviously you can put the wheelie control on, you can set the level of it, and it works fantastically as well. So don't think, oh my God, it's a wheelie machine, it'll be all over the place, because it's not that. I think the electronics on both are
very,
amazing.
Very good.
They're both top draw, better than the other bikes that we've ridden, aren't they? Super Nakeds, I would say. But I think the Aprilia for me just has it. It's a little bit more customizable, and it works really well.
Swapping over. It's a very different riding position, isn't it?
Really is, isn't it? The seat's horizontal, isn't it?
The pegs are higher, maybe? I think the pegs are up a little bit more, aren't they?
And the whole riding position's taller, you're up higher, and the bars are more forward than on this, aren't they?
Your bum's in the air a bit more than that, and you're sort of coming down on the bars. It's more of I'd say it's more of a sporty position. I think this position puts more weight over the front wheel as well, which probably helps with handling.
Oh, that light on that looks so good on that Aprilia.
I know, it's a bit like the Triumph, doesn't it? It's a bit like the Triumph.
Really
one.
nice.
The headlights look good on that, I have to say, in the mirror. It looks mean. Way! The throttle response on this is instant, isn't it?
It's so good, isn't it?
I think like quarter of a turn on the throttle on here is equivalent to a full turn of throttle on the Ducati.
What do you reckon?
It's much more lively feeling. It feels a little bit more cramped, maybe. I don't know.
A bit more what?
A bit more cramped on the position, maybe.
Do you think?
Yeah, a little bit. My sort of knees feel quite close to my elbows. It's definitely a more sporty ride. The Streetfighter, I think we both sort of agreed that it's not a particularly comfortable bike. You'd think it would be more comfortable, being the more upright of the two, the more sort of Street Fighter-y naked of the two. But it's really is a little bit uncomfortable. Anything more than sort of 40 minutes. It's a little bit sort of wrist aching.
It's sort of it's not the riding position as such, because obviously it's a naked Panigale, and therefore compared to that it's a lot more comfortable, but it's just we both found it a little bit tiring, haven't we?
Tiring's the word.
And I think after about 40 minutes or so I feel desperately ready for a break, which is quite unusual for a naked bike, isn't it? And as you say, there's nothing really stands out as being uncomfortable. I think it's just the whole riding experience requires quite a lot of finessing at times, doesn't it? It just gets tiring.
It's the concentration, isn't it? Especially in town. I think when you're out on the open road, it's fine, but going through town, what we found is it's got a lot of engine braking, isn't it?
That's the problem.
We'll talk a little bit about the electronics, but I've minimised the engine braking as far as possible on the electronics, but it's still on and off the throttle quite a lot,
It's extreme engine braking, I would say, and even on the sort of most soft setting of engine braking, that feels like it should be the most aggressive to us, doesn't it?
Completely.
And because
agree.
of that, every time it feels a bit choppy, because it is literally, you hardly have to use the brakes at all ever because of the engine braking so, and you're sort of fighting that on the bars, and that's what makes it a bit fatiguing, I think.
I agree. It reminds me a lot of my Gen 1 Super Duke, which I had. That was the same. It was tiresome in town, and that is one of the reasons I sold it in the end.
Definitely.
But I think, the actual position when you first get on it, it feels comfortable, it feels lovely, but just after a while, it becomes a little bit tiring. Whereas the Tuono, which you may think would be the more uncomfortable out of the two, as it's more sports bike sort of orientated, the riding position, is actually the most comfortable out of the two.
It's incredible. I think this new Tuono is amazing comfort. The seat is so big. There's a lot of space to move around. The padding's fantastic. The riding position, certainly for me at 6'1", is like a perfect riding position, and I can ride it for 2 hours, 3 hours, and I don't even need a break. So by comparison, a lot less tiring to ride.
We're both tall buggers, so whether it's got something to do with being tall on that one,
I agree, and so I think it's worth mentioning our height because it might not apply to everybody else.
I'm 6'2", you're 6'1.5", aren't you? So we're both tall. So whether it's because we're tall we're finding that tiring, don't know, but it's definitely slightly more. Well, not even slightly. For us, it's more uncomfortable than the Tuono.
But I definitely agree though, going back to the engine braking on the Ducati, it's a little bit too aggressive, I think. And it does make it a little bit choppy when you're riding it, when you're off.
I think that's it. I think that's what you didn't like about it in town and that. I think that makes it choppy, doesn't it? It's exactly the word for it.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not a snatchy throttle. It's that engine braking just means, you almost, you have to fight the braking, and you're not, just the moment you drop the throttle.
Exactly. You close the throttle on this and it just sort of rolls on with a nice amount of it. I mean, we both like engine braking on bikes, don't we? But not too much. And this just has a nice amount of engine braking on there. It does look good from the back, the single-sided swinging arm on that, doesn't it?
Oh, it looks amazing, the streetfighter, doesn't it?
I do think it looks incredible.
Yeah, I agree.
Especially on the road, like that tail light, the back wheel.
It looks like nothing else, doesn't it? It looks so racy. As you're saying, this black, looking down now, I don't know if you can see this on the camera, but it's beautiful tank, the shape. It just looks amazing, doesn't it?
We're going to be a little bit harsh on these because we were criticised for picking a lot of faults with the Tuono when we did the Speed RS review, and people saying, you're not being fair, you're picking out tiny little things. So there's a new category called niggles, and we're going to pick all the niggles out that we've found with these bikes. Because we've had them for longer, we can do that. If it's just like a first ride, you can't really. But because we've had these for a while, so first of all, niggles on the Ducati. For me, the grips are too small. This is a level of detail we're getting into here. You need to have the heated grip option because they're too small and it's tiring. We've got big space.
It sounds like a small thing actually, but when you're gloved up, the first thing I noticed was like, oh my god, these grips are so tiny, and it's almost like holding two pencils, isn't it? And they're really small, as you say. If you've got the Ducati heated grips, I'm sure they'll be a bit fatter. It will cure it. But it's just a thing to mention because if you don't want to spend the money on heated grips,
it adds to that fatigue. Because I always find my right hand is getting really painful. It's got no cruise control, which is another niggle worth mentioning. And because of the small grips, you really do need to get a little bit of weight off your wrist at times.
But it's easy to correct and fix. But it's a bit of a strange thing because you'd have to have really tiny hands for those grip sizes to work.
Maybe Italians have very small hands.
I don't know. So grips are your niggles? What are the niggles?
Both these bikes, they're not the best on fuel, are they? They both have got a bit of a drinking problem, especially when you open them up. Even when you haven't opened them up, they are thirsty beasts. The Ducati only has a 16-litre fuel tank. I think they use about the same amount of fuel, but on the Aprilia, it's got an 18.5-litre tank, so they've sort of accommodated extra fuel capacity.
It's not annoying other than the fact you've obviously got...
thing, isn't it?
Exactly. It's not annoying on the Aprilia, other than you've got to obviously find the money to keep filling it up when you do have to fill it up. But the range is fine.
The range is a problem.
On the Ducati, it feels like the fuel light's coming on. You think, oh my God, I've only been out for like barely an hour.
And no fuel gauge as well.
And the fuel light's on again.
The fuel light's on.
Yeah, it needs a bigger tank, doesn't it?
It needs a bigger tank. It's literally under 100 miles. I think it's about 80, 90 miles if you're really gunning it, which
isn't far, is it?
It's not a lot of miles, is it? If you're going to go on some sort of trip...
I can almost cycle that far. Give or take 75 miles. In my opinion, the niggles are two things, really. One, which we've already talked about, and that's the engine braking and the fact that you can adjust it, but not enough. And it's just way too extreme, and you just end up fighting the bike a bit. The other thing about it, which I think is an annoyance and quite a big one for me personally, because I'm quite a hot person, is the fact that it's sort of, called a street fighter, which by definition means it should be okay around the streets, and it gets boiling. The bike gets boiling, and I end up cooking. And it's, I said to you the other day, admittedly the weather was very hot, but it felt like I could strap a seat and some rear sets and handlebars to my barbecue and light it, and I'd feel the same. but it is hot. The Panigale V4 is even hotter.
It's hot,
but
it's not on the same level as the Panigale. The Panigale is
boiling.
ridiculous.
It's boiling, but it's still hot, and I find that, again, it may not bother some people, but the fan comes on when you're in town very quickly. When I park it after I've been riding, if you've got a little bit of slow work before you get home, which most people do, the fan stays on for about 5-6 minutes after I've turned it all off.
And because of the exhaust design right under the seat, you do get a bit of heat coming up through the seat as well. It's quite well insulated, but after time it just soaks through, doesn't it? And you do get a bit of a hot arse. Even the actual fuel in the tank gets hot as well. Does, but it's not on the sort of the Panigale level. I don't know, because it hasn't got fairing.
Well, that's why, isn't it? It's because of the fairing.
Yeah, because of the fairing.
Breathe,
but it is, compared to the Tuono, it's hot.
I mean, it hasn't got cruise, but I'm surprised they haven't fitted air conditioning.
That's what it needs. Niggles on the Tuono.
So
we've sort of addressed the niggles before in the last video.
We have, yeah.
This sort of funny bit of a lash on the chain. I must admit, the chain was a bit loose when we rode it last time, and so it sort of emphasised those problems.
Which sounds like a really obvious thing for two bike reviewers to say, that we hadn't even checked the chain. The chain was a bit loose. It's now been corrected. It's had its first service.
Yeah, hadn't been the first service.
We've noticed that obviously the chain's been lubed, it's been adjusted, and it rides better. And actually, I've ridden it now for a lot longer than I did on the previous review. And the little niggles that I had, it has got a little bit of dry train
sort of lash,
but I can ride around it now and it's fine. My niggles on it are not a lot really. The plastics are a little bit cheapy, which we've already talked about. I think it's sort of not a niggle of the bike, but it's something that you need to consider, which could be a niggle. It's not that easy to ride at town speeds.
That's both of them though, isn't it?
It is both of them.
More so on that.
No, but
it is.
That's a bit like a rocking horse with the engine braking. But the Aprilia, I'm finding myself riding around town literally in second gear. And you literally can go up to 45. And I know that may sound obvious, but second gear is enough for most town riding, which is a little bit unusual on any bike. Normally you'd be into third, wouldn't you? Or occasionally fourth. I'm finding myself in second. So it's just a bit rampant. And so it's just a consideration that if you want to keep your license point free, then I think the Aprilia is more of a challenge to do that on than the Ducati.
I completely agree.
Yeah.
And that's what I said last time with the RS review. I said I couldn't have that because I'd end up
dead or no
license.
I could definitely have it. I love it, and it wouldn't bother me. But it's definitely something to consider.
Yeah.
If you're not very good at self-discipline, this is not the puppy for you.
Well, probably neither of these are the puppy for you, really. If you've not got much self-discipline.
Probably not. But other than that, I don't have any other niggles. The Aprilia is very nice.
I would agree. I would agree.
Very nice.
Oh, it really sings.
Oh, the Ducati is bloody quick, isn't it?
It is quick, isn't it?
Yeah, once it gets up there, it's sort of brutal fast, isn't it?
And it has definitely got a lot more mid-range. I mean, it's still got a lot of mid-range. It's much more than last year's. As I said, the peak torque is now 2,000 revs lower on this year's bike, and that makes a huge difference.
I'll tell you what though, the Aprilia, we're going at a reasonable pace. This road's really undulating and a bit bumpy and bouncy. It's so comfortable. It is unbelievable.
Even when you give it that over the crest like that, it just doesn't want to come out that front wheel.
I know, this comes out everywhere. It's a totally different experience.
It's not a bad thing on this, is it? It's safer, it's keeping the wheel down, but it just takes a little bit of the fun out of it.
So to finish it up, as we always do with these, we've got the keys to both bikes. If I had the power and could afford to give you the keys to one of these machines, I know what your answer is going to be, but which one would you take and why?
I would, without hesitation, have the Aprilia.
Surprise.
The reason why, the Ducati for me, I find, if I'm brutally honest, I wasn't in love with it. It's a little bit too sterile for me. It's not engaging enough, and it's tiring to ride. And I have to be honest, although I do like it, and I think the looks of it I love, and from a pose point of view, I think it's right up there.
It's got it, isn't it?
Yeah, really, very much so. And so I do really like it, but at times when I rode it, I really couldn't wait to have a break from riding it. Which, and actually a couple of days went by where I could have ridden it and I didn't bother, which I think is quite telling.
It was very, very hot though.
It was very hot. It was very hot. The Aprilia, by contrast, every opportunity I get to go and have another ride, I take, and I really love it. and I love it because it's totally engaging. It's giggle worthy when you get into the, you know, on the boil on it. It's so comfortable for my frame. I don't know whether, you know, some bikes just fit you, don't they? It just fits me perfectly. The little niggles around the chain lash and the gearbox kind of latch, I'm over, and I've sort of mastered how to ride it now. And honestly, I love it. I really, really, really love it.
I knew you were going to say that.
And I'm always right.
I've sort of fallen in and out of love with this, and then fallen back in love with it again. Yeah. I can't quite put my finger on what it is with it. I want to really love it. I think with this, you could do so much with it, with the mods and exhaust. It's just what things you could do with it would be
the look of it
incredible.
It's so nice.
Yeah,
as you say.
and
it looks nice stock, doesn't it?
It does, and I really want to love it. I really, really want to love it, and that's why I spent so much time going through the electronics, trying to make it. Can I get? And I do think with a pipe and a map, all of those things which are issues for me, I think could be corrected with it.
It'd certainly be a lot better.
It would be a lot better, but
what about the engagement though? And
it's not. But I think that's to do with the throttle though.
Do you?
I think it's because you've got to give it so much.
Yeah.
I think with the throttle corrected, with the remap and the engine braking also increased, so you could. I think it could be perfect.
So if you were given the keys, you would go.
Oh yeah.
Because that was your question.
Yeah, it was my question. Yeah, no. I don't. It's so close, and I say I think I would like to try and fix this, and get it exactly how I want it. So I think I would take the keys. I think to the Ducati. Yeah.
No, that's good.
But it's not a perfect motorcycle by any stretch of the imagination. No. It needs. Whereas that, you can jump on it. Yeah. You can love it.
But interestingly, in all of the videos that we've ever done together, you always do genuinely like the Aprilia, but you never pick it.
I know, yeah, I know. I do.
I'm not criticising it, but it's just interesting that you always kind of go, it's amazing, it's brilliant, it's got no niggles, I love it, but I wouldn't pick it.
I know, I don't know.
It's just something there not quite right for you in the Aprilia. Just, it just doesn't appeal.
It is all there, but it's just whether we compare it against. Trouble with that, and you picked up on it, it's very hard to ride sensibly.
Yeah, but you don't ride sensibly anyway.
I know, well, that's what I mean, and if I had that, it'd be worse. That's the problem, and I really don't think, I think I'd end up no licence if I had that.
Anyway, consumer advice, ignore what you've just heard. That's the bike that you want.
This could be the bike you want. This could be the bike you want.
I think you've got to try both. Actually, they're both amazing. I can highly recommend V4s. They're so powerful, they're so refined, aren't they?
So engaging, aren't they?
Really are. And actually, even the fuel consumption, which is, they are thirsty, but on the scale of life, and if you think about how many miles you do a year, in reality, most people probably only do between 3,000 and 5,000 miles, maybe.
It's a good point, but these aren't really your only bikes, are they?
Well,
not if you're commuting, not if it's your only form of transport.
Not as a commuter.
Not as your only form of transport, no.
No, but you say that, but if I bought an Aprilia, which I would definitely consider and am considering, I would have it as an only bike, so it would be.
No, but your only form of transport though.
Oh, what, instead of without a car?
No car either.
No.
It would be out of question, wouldn't it?
No, they're hobbies, aren't they?
Yeah, they're hobby bikes.
But they're either a perfect as your only bike, if you had a car or whatever, definitely. But I wouldn't let the fuel consumption personally wouldn't put me off, just because if you looked at it annually, in reality, it's another few £100 over 6 months, isn't it? You know what I mean? It's not.
I think the engagement, the excitement, the sound.
It's worth it.
It's worth the extra fuel, isn't it?
Definitely. They make you laugh under your helmet like nothing else, don't they? So really enjoyable. I love them both.
We both love them. It'd be quite good. So you could have the Tono, I'll have the Street Fighter.
Exactly. And I think
what a pair we would be.
And the other thing as well, I think the Italians just as we haven't really mentioned, they're both Italian. They do know how to. They've got that certain X factor, haven't they?
Yeah.
Not watching it sound like Simon Cowell, but they do, don't they? And I really do quite like that X factor that you get. You know, they're very clever at what they do and how they design stuff, don't they? So very impressive.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, if you've enjoyed that, we're actually going to be borrowing. I'm going to be borrowing the Super Duke next week. So we've really tested all of the new Super Nakeds. So it's going to be the Super Duke Last, which was my bike of last year. You absolutely love the Super Duke. We've both toyed and resisted buying a Super Duke. So I'm really interested to see how it compares with these two, as we've now spent a fair bit of time with these. We won't be doing a comparison review with the Super Duke, but I will be doing a separate follow-up Super Duke, compared to these two beauties. But if you enjoyed it, don't forget, press the subscribe button, click the like button, and we're both, or maybe both of us, will see you on the next video. Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
This is power level 1, which is full power. So what have you done here? I told you I was scared back there. I've never dropped a bike before in my life. Oh, backfire! That's it. That's it. Listen to this. Never mind getting beat up. Give me this any day of the week.